my sister's boyfriend, spent our entire family dinner, mocking me for living at home with my mom who has dementia, calling me a failure who should put her in a facility, when he crashed his Porsche into our mailbox, trying to leave. After mom revealed I'm a retired millionaire, his trunk burst open, revealing wedding rings and a diary from Eleanor Walsh, an elderly widow who died from a medication error. 6 months ago, along with prescription bottles from 17 other dead women, he'd been helping find peace. My sister Erica has always treated our relationship like a competition she's desperately trying to win. Growing up, I was mom's golden child. Not because I asked for it, but because I happened to be good at the things parents notice. Grades, behavior, not setting the dining table on fire during chemistry experiments. Erica, 2 years younger, collected participation trophies while I collected actual trophies. The resentment built up like compound interest on a loan she never asked for. So when she texted that she was finally bringing her boyfriend of 4 months to dinner, I knew this wasn't just about introducing him. This was her championship out, her chance to prove she'd won at something I hadn't. Finding someone who wore suits to brunch and probably had opinions about wine pairings. That evening, they both came over and found me in my usual spot, the dining table, laptop in front of me, while the rest was surrounded by the debris of a 14-hour coding session, wearing sweats that had seen better days. Mom was already having one of her moments, and because of their arrival, she thought Dad had just come home and was looking for him in his old chair. He's at the store, I lied gently, guiding her to the couch. 3 years since the funeral, and sometimes the kindest thing is a small fiction. Enter Bradley. If you ordered investment banker from a catalog, Bradley is what would arrive. Armani suit, hair gel that could survive a hurricane, and a handshake that seemed personally offended by my hoodie. His eyes swept our living room like he was appraising it for demolition. The comments started small, like termites before they hit the support beams. Still living the dorm life, huh? He chuckled, eyeing my laptop setup. In the real world, we have these things called offices. Erica laughed, that nervous titter that meant, please like my family, I need this win. During dinner, he dissected our home like a mediocre Yelp reviewer. The dated wallpaper mom loved, the mismatched chairs Dad had collected from garage sales, the photos that hadn't been updated since 2019. All fodder for his running commentary on depressing decor. I gripped my fork like it might go into his neck on its own if I wished hard enough. You know, he said, cutting into Mom's carefully prepared roast like it had personally wronged him. There's no shame in entry-level work. I could probably get you something at my firm. Mailroom, maybe? Gotta start somewhere when you're... He gestured vaguely at my entire existence. Between opportunities. Erica's defense came out like a whisper at a rock concert. She does computer stuff. The dismissal in her voice hurt more than Bradley's smirk. Mom started asking for Dad again, as I helped her with her evening medications. Blue ones for memory, white ones for anxiety, yellow ones for the heart that broke when Dad stopped. Bradley delivered his final verdict. You know, there are facilities for people like her, professional care. Then you could finally get your act together, maybe experience life beyond this. He waved at our kitchen like it was a prison cell. Situation. The room went silent, not the comfortable quiet of family dinners, but the loaded pause before someone either cries or commits homicide. That's when Mom looked up, one of those rare moments of perfect clarity breaking through the fog. She looked at me and said, thank you for buying this house for us after Dad died, sweetie. I don't know what I'd do without you. Your sister's grateful as well for you paying her rent. You're the best daughter a mother could ask for. Bradley's face went through the 5 stages of grief in record time. Erica, finally finding her voice, added quietly, she retired at 25 after selling her app to Microsoft. The backpedaling began immediately. Suddenly I was choosing family, and so admirable, and wow, Microsoft, but the damage was done, to him. Erica watched him transform from confident consultant to stammering schoolboy. He completely ignored her existence and spent his time sucking up to me. I watched as something shifted in her expression. You should go, she told him, voice steady. She stood up, all 5'4" of her suddenly towering. My sister sends me money when I can't make rent. She gave up a life in Silicon Valley to care for our mother, and you sat here in the house she bought, eating the food she paid for, and called her a failure. Now that you know the truth, I suddenly mean nothing to you as well. Bradley tried to spin it around again, saying he was only asking me for advice, and that her line of thinking was ridiculous. She snapped and said, the only ridiculous thing here is that I brought you here to meet the 2 strongest women I know, and I still haven't kicked you out for insulting them both. I backed Erica up as she shoved him outside. For the first time in years, it felt like we were a complete family again. Then we heard the crash. Metal on metal, the sound of glass exploding, car alarms creating a symphony of chaos. We ran to the street to find Bradley's Porsche wrapped around our mailbox and my car, but that wasn't the shocking part. The trunk of his car had popped open on impact, revealing something that made my blood run cold and Erica gasp, because what spilled out onto our driveway would change everything we thought we knew about the man she'd been dating. The trunk's contents scattered across our driveway like evidence at a crime scene. A vintage jewelry box had burst open, spilling wedding rings across the asphalt. Prescription bottles rolled toward the gutter, their labels catching in the streetlight. A leather journal lay splayed open near my feet. Bradley crawled toward his car, blood running down his face from where his airbag had deployed, moaning something about how those items weren't his. I grabbed my phone to call 911 while Erica stood frozen, staring at the mess. Bradley's moans shifted to something more calculated as he pushed himself up on one elbow. He looked directly at Erica, his voice suddenly steady despite the blood. He told her I must have planted those things, that I'd been stalking him since they started dating. His eyes tracked the journal with desperate focus as I bent to pick it up. Erica's expression wavered between concern for his injuries and confusion about the trunk's contents. She knelt beside one of the rings, turning it over in her fingers. The engraving caught the light, EW 1962. Bradley's face changed when he saw her examining it. The calculated calm cracked for just a moment. A police officer arrived within minutes, the benefits of living in a quiet neighborhood. He checked Bradley's injuries first, then started cataloging the scene. When he picked up one of the prescription bottles, he radioed dispatch. The name on the label was Eleanor Walsh, and according to their system, she'd been deceased for 6 months. Suspected medication error. Bradley's expression hardened at the mention of her name. The officer asked if I wanted to give a statement right then. I clutched the journal, its leather cover worn smooth, and told him I was too shaken up. Tomorrow would be better. He nodded, focused more on Bradley's injuries and the accident accident report. The journal's first visible page had an address written in shaky handwriting. Our address, Mom's address. At the hospital, Erica discovered Bradley had listed her as his emergency contact just 2 weeks after they'd met. The intake nurse mentioned he'd also used her insurance information without asking, which explained some confusing medical bills Erica had mentioned getting. While she handled the paperwork, trying to untangle what permissions she'd apparently given without knowing, I locked myself in a bathroom stall. The journal was Eleanor Walsh's diary. Her handwriting started strong in the early pages, but grew shakier toward the end. The later entries had margin notes in different handwriting, clinical observations about elderly women choosing to join Harold. The name Harold appeared repeatedly, but without context. I photographed every page with my phone before tucking the journal into my bag. When I emerged from the bathroom, security guards were looking for me. Bradley had convinced the nurse I was his girlfriend's unstable sister who'd been harassing him for months. He'd already started spinning his narrative, painting himself as the victim of a jealous sibling's vendetta. The guards found me quickly, but Erica intervened, explaining I was with her. Bradley's text arrived on Erica's phone while we sat in the waiting room. He apologized for appearing vulnerable, claimed I'd always been jealous of their relationship, insisted those items in his trunk were planted. He begged her to believe him. Erica showed me the message without commenting, but her hands shook slightly. During the drive home, Erica finally spoke. She admitted Bradley had known about Mom's dementia before she'd ever mentioned it. On their second date, he'd asked how she was handling her mother's condition. She'd been so touched by his apparent empathy that she hadn't questioned how he knew. The pieces were starting to form a picture neither of us wanted to see. Back at the house, I spread Eleanor's diary across the dining table. Her name was embossed inside the front cover in fading gold letters. I found the final entry, dated 3 days before her death. She wrote about how kind B was, how he helped organize her medications. She felt drowsy lately, but B assured her it was normal for someone her age. The margin note in different handwriting read, "Increased dosage as discussed." Mom wandered into the dining room, still agitated from the evening's chaos. She kept asking where Harold was, a name that meant nothing to us. Dad's name was Robert, but Harold appeared throughout Eleanor's diary, and now Mom was asking for him. The connection made my stomach turn. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. There's something really strange about Bradley knowing Mom had dementia before Erica ever told him. Makes me wonder how much research he did on the family before even meeting Erica. Erica's friend Lisa arrived in tears, clutching her phone. She'd seen the crash photos Erica had posted on social media, and she recognized one of the rings. It belonged to her grandmother who died 8 months ago. Lisa couldn't understand how Bradley could have it. He'd been so supportive when her grandmother passed, even helped with the funeral arrangements. I showed Lisa the diary entries. Eleanor wrote repeatedly that B reminded her of Harold, her late husband. The pattern became clear as I read more entries. Bradley studied his marks, learned about their deceased husbands, then presented himself as a familiar echo of lost love. He became what lonely widows needed to see. Bradley called from the hospital, asking Erica to bring him fresh clothes. His voice was warm, apologetic. He suggested they start fresh at his place once he was released. He'd already called her work to say she needed time off for a family emergency. The presumption in his voice, the casual control, sent chills through both of us. I checked my Amazon account on a hunch. Erica knew the password. We shared most streaming services. The search history showed queries for elderly care books, dementia management guides, and power of attorney forms, searches I hadn't made. The timestamps showed activity over the past 3 months, well before that dinner. The police officer arrived to take my statement. He seemed sympathetic at first, taking notes about the diary and the prescription bottles. Then Bradley's lawyer showed up. Apparently, Bradley had retained counsel and filed a restraining order against me. The officer's demeanor shifted. He suggested I might want to seek help for my issues with my sister's relationship. Eleanor Walsh's house stood empty, a for sale sign tilting in the overgrown yard. The neighbor, an elderly woman who introduced herself as Mrs. Chen, remembered Eleanor well. She also remembered Eleanor's grandson Timothy from Seattle. He'd been suspicious of Eleanor's new friend, but lived too far away to investigate properly. Mrs. Chen gave me Timothy's contact information from her Christmas card list. Timothy responded to my Facebook message within an hour. His grandmother had been sharp until her new friend appeared. She died clutching her wedding ring, the one that went missing before her funeral, the one now sitting in evidence from Bradley's trunk. Timothy had suspected foul play, but couldn't prove anything from across the country. I showed Mom a photo of Bradley from Erica's phone. Her reaction was immediate and visceral. She pulled back, shaking her head. She kept saying Harold didn't like him, that Harold wouldn't approve, but there was no Harold in our family. Dad's name was Robert. Mom was conflating past and present, but the fear in her eyes was very real. While organizing Mom's medications, I noticed something wrong. Her Thursday med container was empty, but it was only Tuesday. Someone had been in our house, reorganizing her medicines, the same clinical precision I'd seen in the margin notes of Eleanor's diary. My hands shook as I recounted every med. Lisa admitted Bradley had keys to her grandmother's house. He'd insisted on helping with errands, visiting when Lisa was at work. He always texted updates about his visits, creating a paper trail of a caring friend. Looking back, Lisa realized he'd been documenting his access, establishing himself as a trusted caregiver. Erica's laptop revealed more disturbing searches. Bradley had used it to research Washington state inheritance law and power of attorney for elderly parents. The search history dated back 2 months, long before he'd met our mother. He'd been preparing, studying the legal landscape for elder exploitation. A delivery arrived that afternoon. Flowers for Mom with a card. Thinking of you in this difficult time. Love, Bradley. He'd barely acknowledged her existence at dinner, and now he was establishing a relationship that didn't exist, creating evidence of care and concern where none had been. 3 days after the crash, I caught a shadow at Mom's window while taking out the trash. Bradley had been released from the hospital yesterday, according to Erica. The distinctive cologne scent lingering by our garden gate confirmed my suspicion. He was watching us, testing our defenses. Bradley's neighborhood Facebook post appeared the next morning. He'd written about his concern for an elderly neighbor with dementia being cared for by an absent daughter. The photo showed Mom looking confused in our garden. I recognized the angle immediately. It had been taken weeks ago from the sidewalk, long before we'd ever met him. He'd been documenting our family without our knowledge. The pattern crystallized as I read his post. boost, establish himself as a concerned helper, document the family's supposed neglect, position himself as a savior. Every step matched Eleanor Walsh's diary entries perfectly. He'd done this before, and he was doing it again. Timothy arrived from Seattle that afternoon, carrying a thick folder of bank records. His grandmother had withdrawn $73,000 in her final month, all recorded as gifts to Bradley's consulting firm. She'd been paying him to be her friend, to help with her medications, to ease her loneliness. The amount started small but escalated rapidly near the end. Mom's doctor called with disturbing news. A concerned young man had phoned last week about adjusting her medications, claiming to be family. The call had come before the crash, before we'd ever introduced Bradley to anyone as Erica's boyfriend. He'd been circling our family, gathering information, preparing his approach. I discovered our door alarm had been disabled. The batteries in the carbon monoxide detector were missing. Small changes that suggested someone had been entering our house regularly, familiarizing themselves with our security, our routines, our vulnerabilities. The realization made my skin crawl. Adult Protective Services arrived for a wellness check the next day. They'd received an anonymous complaint about elder neglect. They found nothing wrong, of course, but the visit created an official record. Another piece of Bradley's documentation strategy, building a case that didn't exist. 3 neighbors stopped me over the following days with similar stories. Bradley had been walking our street at odd hours since last spring, about 8 months ago. He always had plausible excuses, looking for a lost dog, meeting Erica, checking on elderly neighbors. He'd mapped our entire neighborhood, learned everyone's routines, identified his targets. The senior center director confirmed my worst suspicions. Bradley had volunteered there last year, before he'd ever met Erica. He'd specifically requested to work with dementia patients, showed unusual interest in their family situations. They'd asked him to stop volunteering after he made inappropriate inquiries about patients' finances. Bradley called while I was reviewing security footage, pretending to be from a survey company asking about elderly care satisfaction. I recognized his voice despite the attempted accent. I played along, curious what information he was seeking. He asked detailed questions about Mom's daily routine, her medication schedule, her moments of clarity. Mom had one of those moments while I was on the phone with him. She remembered the man from the center who'd asked about Robert, about our family situation, about her condition. Bradley had been studying us for over a year, long before that dinner, long before Erica thought she'd met him randomly at a coffee shop. Erica made a horrifying discovery while checking her car for a strange noise. A GPS tracker was attached to the undercarriage. Another was sewn into the lining of her purse, hidden in a decorative charm Bradley had given her as a thoughtful gift. He'd been monitoring both our movements, knowing where we went when we left Mom alone. Our security camera captured a figure testing the new locks at 3 a.m. The infrared footage was too degraded for positive identification, but the height and build matched Bradley's. The figure had the same distinctive limp from the crash. He was escalating, getting bolder, more desperate. Bradley's text to Erica shifted from apologetic to threatening. He sent photos of them together with disturbing poetry about love betrayed and consequences for abandonment. The manipulation tactics were failing, so he was dropping the mask, revealing the predator beneath a polished exterior. Lisa discovered her grandmother's missing jewelry while helping clear out Bradley's apartment. He'd given her a key months ago, claiming he needed someone to water his plants during business trips. The jewelry was hidden in his closet, wrapped in tissue paper. He claimed Eleanor had wanted him to have these items, but couldn't explain why they were concealed. Eleanor's diary revealed the full scope of his deception. She'd met Bradley at a grief support group where he claimed his husband Harold had died, the same name Mom kept mentioning. Timothy's research confirmed no one named Harold had died in their area that year. Bradley had invented a dead husband to mirror Eleanor's loss. Only 2 people still supported Bradley, his lawyer and surprisingly Diane from Erica's book club. He'd been secretly texting her, promising to explain everything, suggesting they could start fresh together. Even while stalking our family, he was cultivating backup options, other potential victims. I found Mom's life insurance policy in our recycling bin. Someone had tried to change the beneficiary to Bradley using forged signatures. The insurance company had rejected it due to inconsistencies in the handwriting. He'd been trying for months to position himself as her beneficiary, planning for her death before he'd even met her. Erica moved back home that night. We installed new locks, added more cameras, created a schedule so Mom was never alone. Bradley's text to her escalated, raging about ruining his life, about ungrateful women, about consequences. Bradley turning his own grandma grief support group sob story into a copycat scheme for Eleanor is peak villain efficiency. Why write new material when you can just recycle the same dead Harold everywhere like some twisted franchise operation? The sisters who'd competed for years were finally united in protecting their mother. While reviewing family photos, we found evidence of Bradley's long surveillance. Pictures from last year's memorial service for Mom's friend showed him in the background, studying the grieving families, selecting his next targets. He'd been hunting at funerals, grief support groups, senior centers, anywhere vulnerable elderly people gathered. Despite online forums urging us to gather more evidence through questionable means, I chose legal channels. We documented everything properly, built a legitimate case, focused on protecting Mom rather than pursuing vigilante justice. Every text, every sighting, every piece of evidence was carefully preserved. Bradley appeared at our house with a police officer, claiming he needed to retrieve belongings he'd left behind. He couldn't specify what items, revealing he was fishing for an excuse to enter our home. The officer noticed his lies didn't align. His story kept changing. Bradley left empty-handed, his frustration visible. Timothy's lawyer made a crucial discovery. Eleanor's original will was in her safety deposit box, leaving everything to Timothy. The will Bradley had tried to execute was signed when Eleanor was heavily medicated, barely conscious. The signature was shaky, witnessed by people who didn't exist. Another forged document in his pattern of exploitation. Diane finally saw the truth when she visited, and found Bradley parked outside our house at 2 a.m. He claimed he was worried about Erica, but his obsession was obvious. Diane realized she'd been groomed as another victim, another lonely woman he could exploit. She joined our growing network of his targets. The pattern became undeniable as I mapped Bradley's movements. He targeted widows within walking distance of each other, all with dementia, all with valuable homes. Mom's house sat at the center of his hunting radius. He could visit multiple victims in a single day, maintaining his careful documentation of their decline. Erica's therapist provided crucial evidence. She'd started seeing her for family issues months ago, and Bradley had repeatedly tried to accompany her to sessions. He'd attempted to insert himself into her treatment, gather information about our family dynamics, learn our vulnerabilities from a professional source. During a confrontation at the grocery store, Bradley made a critical error. He mentioned Dad's medication regimen, specific substances and dosages that he shouldn't have known, information that revealed he'd researched our family extensively, possibly accessing medical records, long before meeting Erica. Former co-workers reached out to Erica after hearing about the breakup. They shared concerns they'd kept quiet about Bradley's controlling behavior, his questions about her family's finances, his interest in her mother's condition. He'd been isolating her from support systems while gathering intelligence. Bradley's harassment became increasingly sloppy. Calls from different burner phones with poorly disguised voices, text messages from various numbers with similar writing patterns. His desperation was showing as his carefully constructed plan fell apart. The predator was becoming prey. The hospital's volunteer coordinator revealed another piece of the puzzle. Bradley had applied to work with terminal patients last year, but was rejected after background concerns. He'd been trying multiple angles to access vulnerable families, rejected from one program after another, until he'd found other ways in. Rather than pursue revenge, I focused on securing Mom's safety. We upgraded all security systems, arranged rotating care schedules with trusted neighbors, created multiple layers of protection, community defense rather than solo vigilance. The neighborhood rallied around protecting its vulnerable members. Lisa, Timothy, and 3 other families Bradley had approached formed an informal support network. We shared information, compared tactics, protected our elderly relatives. His hunting ground evaporated as word spread. Elderly residents at Mom's senior center warned each other. Families compared notes. His reputation preceded him now. Bradley's attempts to infiltrate my workplace failed when co-workers recognized him from security alerts Erica had distributed. He'd tried to gather information about my schedule, my income, my vulnerabilities. Instead, he'd revealed his desperation to anyone watching. The legal review brought mixed news. Eleanor's medicated will was clearly invalid, but criminal prosecution would be difficult without more concrete evidence. Civil suits were the only option. The system that should protect the vulnerable had loopholes Bradley had studied and exploited. Mom's agitation increased as Thursday approached. She kept mentioning the day with visible fear, though we couldn't understand why. Then Timothy revealed Eleanor's diary showed Bradley always visited on Thursdays, the same day Eleanor had died. Mom's fragmented memories were trying to warn us. Bradley left a voicemail that dropped all pretense. He spoke about Mom deserving better care, understanding her needs, how some transitions were meant to be peaceful. He mentioned helping Eleanor find peace. The threat was veiled but clear. He intended to help Mom the same way. The stakes crystallized in that moment. This wasn't about justice for past victims anymore. This was about preventing Bradley from completing his plan for Mom. Every security measure, every legal document, every precaution was about keeping him from helping another elderly woman find his version of peace. I demonstrated growth by working within the system despite its earlier dismissiveness, building a documented pattern, filing proper reports, creating an evidence trail that couldn't be dismissed, patience and persistence over passion and rash action, the slow path to justice. A local elder care attorney reviewed our case pro bono. She focused on obtaining a restraining order and conservatorship protection rather than pursuing criminal charges. Practical protection over perfect justice. The goal was keeping Mom safe, not winning a legal battle. Truth about Bradley spread through whisper networks. Seniors warned each other at community centers. Families shared stories at support groups. His carefully cultivated hunting grounds disappeared as his tactics became known. The predator's camouflage failed once people knew what to look for. The judge granted a temporary restraining order after reviewing our documentation. Bradley was ordered to stay 500 feet from our family. It felt like a small victory, but we knew paper wouldn't stop someone who'd spent over a year stalking his victims. Within hours, Bradley violated the order. A neighbor called to report he was approaching Mom during her morning walk. He claimed coincidence, but witnesses saw him pressing a medication bottle into her hand while speaking urgently about helping her. Erica intervened when Bradley cornered Mom during her walk, grabbing his wrist as he tried to press pills into her hand while claiming they were just vitamins. Witnesses saw him screaming about helping her like Eleanor as police arrived. The officers recognized him from the restraining order violation and arrested him immediately. Bradley's arrest for assault and violating the restraining order led to a bail hearing. The prosecutor revealed they'd found a bus ticket to Portland in his wallet, establishing him as a flight risk. The judge denied bail, ordering Bradley held until trial. His lawyer argued this was excessive for a first offense, but the pattern of behavior spoke louder than legal technicalities. Our family relationships strengthened through the crisis in unexpected ways. Erica apologized for years of resentment while we sorted through security footage together. I admitted my guilt over leaving for Silicon Valley, acknowledging how my success had created distance between us. Mom had a clarity moment during dinner, reaching across the table to squeeze both our hands, forgiving us both for conflicts she'd witnessed but never addressed. Detective Martinez, who'd initially been dismissive of our concerns, arrived at our house with an apology. She revealed her own grandmother had been approached by Bradley last year at a grief support group. Her family had intervened before anything happened, but she recognized the pattern now. She helped us compile a comprehensive evidence packet showing Bradley's systematic approach to targeting elderly widows. I spent days organizing everything into a clear timeline. Bradley's senior center volunteering, his attendance at funerals, his methodical stalking of vulnerable families. The evidence focused on patterns rather than isolated incidents, demonstrating premeditation and planning. Each document, photograph, and witness statement built upon the previous one, creating an undeniable narrative of predatory behavior. The breakthrough came when Bradley's former roommate contacted me through Facebook. He'd found a box Bradley had left behind containing what he called research materials. The box held printouts about elderly exploitation techniques, medication interactions that could mimic natural decline, and legal loopholes in elder care laws. The roommate had kept it thinking Bradley might want it back, but our story made him him realize what he'd been storing. Timothy testified at the preliminary hearing about his grandmother's final days. He revealed Eleanor's last words were a plea not to let Bradley hurt anyone else, suggesting she'd known what he'd done but was too medicated to articulate it clearly. The judge listened intently as Timothy described his grandmother's rapid decline after meeting Bradley, the systematic isolation from family, the escalating medication doses. Bank forensics revealed the full scope of Bradley's activities. His consulting business account showed regular deposits from elderly women across 3 counties over 2 years. Timothy's grandmother Eleanor actually warned about Bradley with her last words. That detail seems awfully convenient for building this case right now. Makes me wonder if Timothy's remembering things differently now that he knows what Bradley was doing to other families. The amounts were carefully calculated to stay below reporting thresholds, usually between $2,000 and $5,000 per transaction. 17 different victims had been identified so far, though investigators suspected there were more. The search of Bradley's apartment after his arrest yielded damning evidence. Police found a collection of obituaries with widows' names circled in red ink. Sticky notes attached to each one detailed property values, insurance policies, and family dynamics. One folder labeled Prospects contained information about 6 elderly women in our neighborhood, including Mom. Each profile included their daily routines, medication schedules, and relationship status with their families. The community response exceeded our expectations. 17 families came forward after learning about Bradley's arrest, sharing their experiences with a charming young man who'd befriended their elderly relatives. Most had dismissed small concerns as paranoia, only recognizing the pattern in hindsight. Support groups at 3 senior centers began discussing predatory behavior, teaching members to recognize warning signs. Bradley posted bail using funds from his business account, arguing successfully that the money represented legitimate consulting fees. The judge couldn't freeze assets without proving they were obtained illegally, a process that would take months. Bradley's lawyer painted him as a misunderstood caregiver being persecuted by a jealous family. Some people in the community began to question our motives, wondering if we were simply trying to control Mom's assets. Online harassment began immediately after Bradley's release. Fake social media accounts posted accusations about my mental instability and alleged history of family conflicts. Anonymous letters arrived at neighbors' houses claiming I was the real danger to Mom, that I'd isolated her to control her finances. The campaign was clearly coordinated, using similar language and formatting across multiple platforms. The Whisper network that had initially supported us began to fragment. Some families received threatening letters from Bradley's lawyer about potential defamation lawsuits. Timothy had to return to Seattle for work, unable to maintain the financial burden of extended leave. Other supporters quietly distanced themselves, afraid of becoming targets themselves. The isolation felt intentional, strategic, designed to wear us down. Erica cracked under the pressure after 2 weeks of constant harassment. She checked into a hotel, texting that she needed space to clear her head. I understood her exhaustion, but felt abandoned nonetheless. The house felt impossibly large at 3 a.m. Every creak potentially Bradley testing our defenses. Mom's confusion increased with Erica gone, repeatedly asking where her younger daughter was. The prosecutor called with a difficult choice. They could pursue attempted murder charges based on the syringe incident, but conviction was unlikely without proof of what the syringe contained. The plea deal option would guarantee Bradley served time but for lesser charges. 7 to 10 years for elder abuse and assault, with lifetime registration as a vulnerable adult abuser. It felt like settling for crumbs when we deserved the whole loaf. I spent sleepless nights weighing our options. Perfect justice through a trial that might fail, or guaranteed protection through a compromise. The inheritance money from selling my app could fund an extended legal battle, but that would mean depleting the resources I'd saved for Mom's long-term care. Every choice felt like a trap Bradley had set, forcing us to choose between justice and security. The decision crystallized when I found Mom in the kitchen at dawn, trying to make breakfast for Dad. She'd forgotten he was gone again, setting his place at the table with shaking hands. This wasn't about winning or losing anymore. This was about ensuring she could live her remaining years in peace, without fear of predators circling her vulnerability. I chose the plea deal, committing our resources to Mom's protection rather than Bradley's prosecution. The decision triggered his final desperate moves, revealing how accurately we'd assessed the threat. He couldn't accept losing control, couldn't tolerate his carefully constructed plan falling apart. His response would prove everything we'd claimed about his dangerous obsession. Bradley broke into our house while I was at the lawyer's office finalizing the plea agreement. Mrs. Chen next door heard glass breaking and immediately called 911. Police arrived to find Bradley in Mom's room with a syringe filled with clear liquid. He'd been seconds away from injecting her when they burst in. Mom was found hiding in her closet, terrified but unharmed. The interrogation revealed Bradley's delusions in full detail. He insisted he'd been helping elderly women find peace, that they begged him to ease their suffering. He spoke about being an angel of mercy, chosen to guide confused souls to their eternal rest. The detective noted his complete disconnect from reality, his inability to recognize his victims as anything more than projects to be completed. Investigation into Bradley's background uncovered his full name, Bradley Harold Thompson. He'd been using his middle name to manipulate elderly women who'd lost husbands, presenting himself as a familiar echo of their deceased loves. His father had died in a nursing home 5 years ago under circumstances that suddenly seemed suspicious. The facility had noted unusual medication changes in his final weeks, but no investigation had occurred. Erica returned with evidence she'd been gathering during her apparent retreat. She'd worn a recording device to a secret meeting with Bradley, where he'd confessed to helping angels find peace. Her courage in facing him alone, building the evidence we needed, showed strength I hadn't recognized before. The recording captured his admission that some transitions were meant to be peaceful, that he'd helped Eleanor and others find rest. The prosecutor amended charges based on the new evidence, but murder charges remained unlikely without bodies to exhume and examine. The plea deal evolved to include 3 counts of elder abuse, 2 counts of assault, and 1 count of attempted poisoning. Bradley would serve 7 to 10 years minimum, with lifetime monitoring and registration as a vulnerable adult abuser. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was certain protection. At sentencing, Bradley maintained his victim narrative. He claimed our family had conspired against him, that we'd hidden Dad's dad's suspicious death. Medical records quickly disproved this, showing dad's natural decline from heart disease. Bradley's final manipulation fell flat, revealing him as a desperate man grasping for control he'd forever lost. His attempt to represent himself and cross-examine Mom backfired spectacularly. She looked directly at him during one of her clear moments and stated firmly that he was the bad man who hurt Eleanor. The courtroom fell silent at her clarity, her ability to name his crime despite her condition. Bradley's mask finally slipped completely, showing rage at being exposed by someone he dismissed as incompetent. The verdict brought relief without celebration. 7 years minimum before parole eligibility, lifetime restraining orders for our family and 17 others, mandatory registration as a vulnerable adult abuser. The judge noted the disturbing pattern of predation and obsession with controlling elderly women's deaths. Justice tasted like ash in our mouths, necessary but joyless. Bradley began serving his sentence at the state correctional facility. His letters proclaiming innocence arrived weekly until we had them returned unopened. His power to manipulate through words was finally contained behind concrete walls and steel bars. The prison system that would hold him for years became the boundary his victims had needed. Eleanor's estate was properly distributed to Timothy, who used part of it to establish a fund for elder abuse prevention. Other families recovered what they could through civil suits, though most of Bradley's assets had been carefully hidden. The Financial Crimes Unit continued investigating, tracking money through shell companies and consulting fees. Recovery would take years, but the process had begun. Erica and I established an informal neighborhood watch system focused on protecting vulnerable elderly residents. We shared Bradley's tactics at community meetings, teaching families to recognize grooming behaviors and documentation strategies. His playbook became our shield, his methods turned into prevention tools. Knowledge spread through senior centers and support groups, creating networks of protection. 1 year later, our lives had found new rhythms. Mom still had good days and bad, but she was safe. Her medications were properly managed by a trusted medical team, her routines maintained by family who'd learned to work together. The dining table where everything began now hosted Sunday dinners with Timothy, Lisa, and other families Bradley had targeted. We shared stories of our loved ones' lives rather than their deaths, celebrating who they'd been before Bradley entered their worlds. Mom, in a rare moment of clarity, thanked her daughters for keeping the bad man away from Harold. Still confused, but finally safe. The house stood unchanged despite Bradley's sneers about depressing decor. Its value lay not in appearance, but in the warmth of family protecting each other. Erica had learned to spot predators wearing expensive suits. I'd learned that staying close mattered more than earning money. And Bradley learned that some angels have daughters watching over them. 7 years to think about that in a cell, while life continued in the house he'd never enter again. Alright, that's a wrap on this mess. Appreciate you letting me chime in. Meanwhile, Bradley's walking away with 7 to 10 and a plot twist no one asked for. Catch you next time, if we survive the next one.